All right, we're back. Quick break, and TB wants to chime in on this, and I'm sure Thorin and is gonna have a lot to say here, but only on this topic though, I believe, right, TB? Just
yeah. You don't need me for the rest.
All right. So
we need you for this though, mate. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, as the foremost authority on dumbing down esports, I think you need me here.
Sure. Okay. Let's go.
The interesting thing you were talking about actually was the first thing that I noticed was the idea of calling games early and things like that, and there being this notion that there's only two ways to do it. The idea that you either call the game early, and apparently that's honest, and it's like, right, it's just over, or you try and overhype the thing to the very end and pretend that somebody actually has a chance to win. And it's not really true that it's just this binary state.
It's kind of a straw man argument, really, isn't it? You could just call the game accurate at all points in the game, or you could say you have to go totally extreme one way, or you have to just call the game immediately. Like, no, continue with your point, please.
Well, the point of the fact is that it really comes down to the style of the person that's actually dealing with the casting, and also the fact that you don't want to say 10 minutes before the end of a game, yeah, this is over, there's no point in you actually watching it and you wasting your time.
That'd be a ridiculous thing to say. Continue.
Yeah, and of course it would. And more to the point, casters are supposed to be there to actually convey information to the audience and keep them interested in the game. And unfortunately, not 100% of StarCraft is all that interesting all the time.
Hold on, wait, can I step in real fast before? Okay, so to take what Thorin is saying and to translate that into non-dickish words, I think what Thorin is trying to say is that it's possible to both simultaneously maintain interest in the game while also being relatively legitimate in regards to what you're casting. So that it's possible to keep excitement.
Destiny, you have to do one way or the other. Don't you understand?
Fuck, can we mute this motherfucker? No, it's just that it's possible to continue casting a game and to be legitimate or honest, and that in the odd chance that something does flip around, that would be far more exciting than if we'd been kind of given false hype the entire time. Like let's say a game is over by the 6-minute mark and you kind of cast in that style that this player's in a ton of trouble, there's really not much you can do. If he does manage to flip that around, that would be a lot more exciting than kind of falsely hyping it the entire time.
Yeah, which is what exactly I agree with, but which casters exactly are doing this false hype where they're claiming someone most certainly still has a chance? Like who?
Everyone.
Name an example. Never happened. Name another.
Other people like you, Clarice. Who else is a caster? Joe Miller doesn't really do StarCraft. Let me think of some other ones. Tasteless. Who else is a caster? Give me some names, and I'll tell you if they do or not.
You don't seem to watch much StarCraft if you can only come up with 3 casters from your list there, mate.
I told you I don't listen to StarCraft, mate. I mute it.
Okay, so your comments on casting are based on what experience when it comes to actually viewing the cast and listening to it, especially lately?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So you have to listen to every single one. Again, same thing again. You have to listen to every single cast to actually have a valid opinion and know what you're talking about.
No, but it's generally a good idea to have listened to at least a decent sample of it.
Okay, what's a decent sample?
I don't know. What was the last match you watched?
MMA in WCS EU. So basically, we can go the other way. I'll just tell you there's about probably 2 or 3 people in the whole world who do the style me and Destiny are describing, where they actually try to quantify, or they actually try to keep it at all times so that they don't let the entertainment value supersede the excitement of the real match. Now, listen, I understand that sometimes if you want to be an entertainer, as in you want to have high viewing figures, some matches are going to kill that, okay? Because some matches like this League of Legends final we described, they're going to be a 3-0 stomp, and there's going to be times where maybe it's not very exciting. Now, if you want to build in fake hype there, and you want to convince people for a little while to stay interested in the match, that there is something going on there, that is true. In the short term, I think you'll probably get a viewer spike from that. But I think that actually for the real sport, I'm not worried about there being 4 people extra by you doing that. I care about if the sport's really interesting. So I can take the blow of there being some games that aren't that good for the games that are amazing, having the real casting, because then they become even more amazing because all you're doing is translating what's actually there. Now, you said before something like a caster's job is like transmit information to the audience and like keep them engaged. I can't remember what the lines was. That sounds to me like you're describing what I'm talking about, but you're actually describing the opposite. So what do you mean by that?
I'm not really describing the opposite at all. I mean, we're talking about the idea that a lot of people tend to really dislike the idea of saying what is on the screen and conveying that in a way that's actually exciting and interesting.
We dislike it. That's what I think is the main point.
But
We're
what do you-
making. Listen, I'll totally agree. Maybe your method is going to be way more popular, and maybe for esports to grow, this fucking zombie cult, we actually have to do that. But personally, I think it sucks. Now, I'm not saying
Well,
you
apparently
suck.
we
I
have to
don't
do it
listen
in
to
real
you, mate.
sports as well. That's the thing. This is something that we've been doing for decades at this point, the idea of the play-by-play cast. And at the end of the day, it doesn't take up the entire airspace. That is why you have
you're
your
right there, actually.
It's
Yeah.
why you have your analytical team behind that. And that's why you build that structure and you don't kind of go too far in one direction.
No, I think you're right there, actually. Like, one thing, I mean, this has been talked about in talk shows a million times. Never pair two play-by-play casters on a
it's a
cast. That
terrible
makes
idea.
no sense. But listen, you're actually right there, which is that I think part of the setup actually comes from sports, which is a flaw, which is the idea that the play-by-play guy has to hand it off in like such a strict way. Like, okay, now you talk, now I talk, now you talk. Instead, I think it should be more like I always thought of it like this in an ideal world. You'd have the expert guy and he'd have his opinions, and in theory he can give his opinions on anything that happens, no matter what happens in the game, because he's an expert. He doesn't have to have something planned. Okay, so then what the caster should do, who's the play-by-play guy, is convey the excitement of an individual engagement, but then he should work like the punctuation between the interesting substantive words of the actual analyst guy. So if you do it that way, listen, I could totally agree. You could be a very good caster, for example. You'd have a good voice, you'd have a good following, but you'd need like a really good setup with how you would do it with your analysis guy. Whereas the problem is that doesn't exist now. And in fact, one thing Destiny didn't make the point of, which I think is true, is that a lot of the analysis guys are now veering more towards the play-by-play style themselves. They're going more away from like direct analysis and going to more of like the speculative stuff, like, oh, maybe he could come back and all. They're trying to hype it up as well.
I don't disagree with that at all, honestly. Like, what you were describing was exactly what myself and Apollo tried to do when we were doing the European events prior to us basically not being a duo anymore. And what I said to him very specifically, which I've run into problems with other duos. Like, example would be, I've cast with Day 9 before, right? And casting with Day 9 is like casting with two separate people sometimes. And I love the guy to death, but there are times when he really, really wants to scream over the battle, and he'll even do it while I'm trying to do my play-by-play of the battle. I'm just saying, mate, you have analytical skill, yeah? For the longest time, you were considered to be the premier analyst for this game, alongside Artosis. And I know you want to do play-by-play, but that's kind of my thing, and it's also the only thing I'm good at. Please don't take away my role. And I can hand it off to you, and you can hand it back to me. And StarCraft works perfectly in that respect, because actually, half the time there isn't action going on. In fact, more than half the time. A lot of it is build up to an encounter. And the play-by-play guy at that point, their role is to prompt the analyst to actually provide interesting analytical information about what's currently going on at the time, ask them questions, and kind of tease that information out of them.
I mean, actually, this happened in esports where we had like a perfect combo. And it was in Quake Live, okay, which is obviously a game not many people here are going to watch much. The reason why this combo worked so well was Joe Miller and Too Good. And what happened was, Joe Miller just did the mechanical aspects of like talking about the play, like, oh, he's going to go up this jump pad now or something, and he has a good voice for that, and he has very good pacing and breath control. He had that, but he stayed within his lane, okay. Part of it's because Too Good's such a dominating personality, okay. But then anytime you had some real analysis was required, Too Good would step in, and not only was he also a good like orator and whatnot, but he had the really good knowledge, and he could translate it to the average person, okay. And so we almost had like the perfect combo. Now, admittedly, it was a small esport, etc. But I even think if you do that right, here's the thing, okay, the cynical marketing exec guy will be like, yeah, but if we just put like Day 9 and Caleris, we put like these two combos of like play-by-play type guys. Well, I guess people wouldn't call Day 9 play-by-play, but to me, he's more in that vein. Anyway, the point is, if you did it right, as in you had the really awesome analysis guy and the really good play-by-play guy, with the right sort of melding, like the synergy, I think it would be even more successful than anything else could be. It's like when people talk about movies, okay. So people will talk about movies and say, oh, you have to dumb it down and make it like Transformers 4. You know, you're not going to get a lot of money for an art house movie. Well, yeah, but if you do the art house movie right and it's Inception, it'll be even bigger than Transformers 4 because it's got all the things it needs to from a mainstream movie, but then it has that extra quality, as in what I'm talking about, the real sport, the real interesting thing there. That's the impetus that really pushes it higher, in my opinion.
All right,
yeah,
5 more minutes. 5 more minutes here, guys. Man, I got to put a cap on this.
Frankly. It's just the way that things have to go down. And unfortunately, we do have a lot of duos these days, but there doesn't necessarily seem to be that kind of synergy. I watched WCS EU. I actually really enjoyed watching Caleris and Todd. I thought that duo actually worked a little bit better than Caleris and Apollo because you had a bit of the play-by-play from Caleris, and Todd had player level analysis to the point where he was still competing in Challenger League at that point. So it's like he knows what he's doing, especially when there's a Protoss matchup. And they also had the banter that kind of took it that extra little way to say, hey, here's the synergy, here's the chemistry between our duos. And unfortunately, you can't necessarily toss a play-by-play and an analyst together these days and actually have good synergy right off the bat. And sometimes you'll never get the opportunity to do it unless they're working a regular show like WCS and not just running into each other every 6 months in an event. And it is difficult.
So don't you find that crazy then? You know, I made that like sort of, I was obviously spitting a little bit of hyperbole when I made that example of the interview for the caster, okay, and what he should do, and the idea that in theory there should be loads of people who are really good at this and we're not picking the right people to be the analytical caster. So isn't it the same thing then with casting? We've got all these casters, and listen, here's the thing, okay, I used to say in Counter-Strike, when people would think I was criticizing a player who didn't fit in a team, I would sometimes make this analogy. In the really top level teams, every player is good, okay, at least good, but they have to be put in the correct role. Now, if you got this same player that doesn't work in Fnatic and you put him in SK in a different role with star players maybe who make up for his weaknesses and he can do something that they can't do, suddenly it works. It's really good. It's the same thing. We have this huge pool of casters and yet they're almost thrown together. It seems either at random or just weird things like, oh, I don't want to do that event, or even weirder things like, well, for the final, it has to be these two guys because these are our two most popular guys.
Oh, God. You're talking about
this
LG
logic doesn't make sense to me, you know. Like, to me, the main thing, again, my priority if I was doing casting would be the synergy has to be amazing. Okay, I want like a good analysis, good play-by-play, but then the synergy is going to be like it. That's what's going to cause, like, the meeting of the two is going to make the more than the sum of the parts type scenario.
For the most part,
so
though,
that should be the
Thorin,
priority.
For the most part, Thorin, don't we see the combos that we're talking about more often than not with play-by-play mixed with an
analyst? I don't know if
analyst?
we do. I think
no, that's a dying
out.
I think it used to be.
Yeah, I don't think we necessarily do. And WCS makes it really difficult as well because basically you need local casters there every day of the week in the studio, which naturally limits who you can actually put in there. A lot of people were complaining, and of course, about the Pro League casters, for instance. But then you got to think, well, who else is going to move out to Korea to cast this 4 days a week? Who's going to do that? And the answer is, well, none of the people you want to do it. There's an answer to that. And who's going to move to Germany to cast in the ESL studio? It's going to be these guys. Who's going to do the American scene? And we say we have a lot of casters, but in reality, like the top tier ones that actually have an audience of their own and bring people in, there's not that many of them. And you don't, unfortunately, get the chance to necessarily pair them correctly. I remember doing an MLG a while ago. I think it was one of their pay-per-views, I think. And they put me with DJ Wheat, which is potentially the worst pairing in the history of esports commentary. Because, like, well, neither of us really know that much about the game, so this is going to be interesting. Like, we've got the voices for it, but we can only bullshit for so long, right? And I don't know. I don't know if there actually are as many casters that are kind of on the level that they need to be, like you describe, in order to really make these pairings happen. Maybe we do need fresh blood. It has been the same casters for the last few years. And the events have now become so kind of nationalized that getting the right casters to the right gigs to pair up together for the right kind of matches even is difficult in and of itself.
Actually, though, I think that another problem, though, is like this.
All right, last point, Thorin, last point.
I've been trying to think it through, like tying all the things together, okay? So, obviously, maybe in a dream world, like, I don't know if I would have play-by-play, because if I know enough about the game, maybe I don't need it as much, okay? Although I'd admit, sometimes it adds excitement. But I think part of the problem here actually is the fact that of the two casters, the play-by-play and the analysis guy, the play-by-play guy, because he's like the professional and the host, he always leads the show and he always leads the discussion. And one of the big problems I see with some of the analysis guys, where I said they were veering more towards the play-by-play side, is they follow the lead of the play-by-play guy too much sometimes. So what happens is sometimes the play-by-play guy even throws it over to them, setting up a strategical thing. And what do you think about the way he's just done that right there? Instead of letting the analysis guy feed in the analysis aspect himself. And I think there should be more back and forth, or even more of the analysis guy leading the overall discussion. Because what I used to see is, like, when I used to do this Counter-Strike commentary, okay, I did it with Joe Miller. And Joe Miller's a very good play-by-play caster. And the difference is, because of my personality, if he said something that I didn't agree with, I wouldn't just say, yeah, that's true, and also this, and then try and get something in there myself. I'd sometimes disagree, or I'd just, that, you know, it was too important to talk about what's going on right now, so I wouldn't even address that. I'd go straight to, No, but you can do it. It's not real disagreement, though. It's like disagreeing on the point, You're not going to disagree personally.
And that's what I'm saying. I like that. It's interesting to the viewer.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah, this could go a couple of different ways. We're not precognizant. We can't necessarily see the future in all circumstances. He could go down a different path. This may not turn out the way that it's supposed to turn out because people make mistakes. And it would be nice to have that level of discussion.
When the analysis tells the play-by-play guy that he's wrong, okay, he's not calling him an idiot and saying he's wrong. He's just saying, he's basically, the subtext is, within the context of our jobs, you made a stab, but actually this is what's really going on. I've only got enough time to really get into what's really happening in the game.
Is it an issue of like not wanting to embarrass each other, TB?
Well, sure.
Yeah, but I think that maybe emotions are a little bit too fragile among some casters. We get paid for talking about video games on a stage in front of a crowd. We should probably have thicker skin, and I'm one of the first people that needs to learn that. But it gets down to the idea that actually, yeah, it's okay to disagree because no one's right 100% of the time, and you should never take that as a slight on your character. Even the best casters are frequently wrong. So it's best to actually allow that discussion. And if you know the person, it's not going to get vicious, and it's certainly not going to get rude or disrespectful. It's just going to be interesting for the viewer, and especially since StarCraft has so much relative downtime.
But it rarely, if ever, happens on air, though. Like, I was watching today.
No, it doesn't.
And Todd didn't, I won't say he called out Keleres, but Keleres, again, a lot of what you all do is theory crafting what's in front of you and what might happen, right, based on what you know and see. And Keleres was doing that on a couple things. And Todd was like, nope, I think he's going to do this. Nope, he's doing this. Again, bringing that analytical side to Keleres. And hopefully Keleres didn't afterwards go, dude, why are you throwing me under the fucking bus? Because he didn't do it to be rude.
I doubt it. They've got such good chemistry.
Yeah, if anything, that should be a wake-up call. Like,
it's great, though, to see, because you just don't see it very often, And it's also, you get a lot of, it gets handed off to the second guy, and he goes, yep, absolutely right, TB. And then I give my point. And maybe I don't agree with you, but I'm afraid to call you out because everyone thinks I'm calling you out. And then Reddit blows up and goes, oh my God, Todd shit all over Keleres. And he didn't. He was just giving him technically the more educated view as that guy in that seat, which is his job. And that was very refreshing.
And Keleres takes it. Keleres, I've seen, he takes it well. I mean, he never gets offended or anything.
But again, the fact that it even happened, I was like, whoa, Keleres just said no to, or Todd just said no to Keleres on that one. That was kind of cool. Just don't see it very often. That
style actually also trains the play-by-play guy to be better. Because I'll give you the same example. When I was doing this Counter-Strike casting with Joe Miller, who's one of the best play-by-play guys, he'd done it for so long where he did this handoff style. And so he did his part, and then it was almost unconnected, like hand it to you, and then you fill in that part, and then he comes back in and he fills in his part. So because I would sometimes disagree, or I would give a totally different point of view, I just noticed intuitively as the matches went on, he would start to hand things over to me, but in a way that would fit my style of how I'd explain the narrative. Or he'd start to pick up things from my actual comments before, like, oh, does this mean that in this case, and maybe, the pacing of the game is actually favoring that team, which is what I would then be wanting to go into anyway. So actually, it's going to cause a little friction early on, but it'll make both people way better in the end, because the other guy, again, he's not going to become an analysis caster, but he's then going to attune his style to fit the analysis caster better, whereas it's the other way around. You get all these analysts, and you plug them in, and then they just fit with whoever the play-by-play guy is. And I think that's like the wrong way around if you really want to make it amazing. Because at the end of the day, the real information is the analysis. Okay, the rest of it's great, but it only has limited value in the seconds that you're saying it. Okay, the other thing has implications for the whole game. So that's what you're building up, I think.
Yeah,
all right,
it would actually be... can I make one last point, Chris?
Last point.
All right, last point. Yeah, I think it would be nice to see analytical casters front and center, because I feel that play-by-play casters are a bit versatile in the sense that they can be swapped between pairings, and they can deal better with that than, say, an analytical caster would when he's dumped with somebody else that he doesn't really know. Because, yeah, we are the guys that on a daily basis do commentary for a living, and we may not know the most about the game, but what we do know is presentation style. We do know when to give space on the mic to the analyst, at least the good ones do, and we know how to get that information out there in a presentable way that newer players can understand, and also provide that excitement that even the top-end players who don't need the analysis actually enjoy, which is why you hear some of the pros say, I really like listening to the play-by-play because no analyst is ever going to give me any information that I can't already determine myself. So casting is definitely not perfect with StarCraft 2. It needs a lot of work, and it's needed a lot of work for years. And I think the only way we're ever going to get that is to, have some open and frank discussions about what's wrong with it.
So TB is advocating witch hunting on Reddit. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, the last thing you should ever do is
Definitely
listen
not.
to Reddit because they're worse than any play-by-play will ever be. So if you want bad analysis, then feel free to read Reddit, or listen to my cast. I'm pretty good at that, too.
All right, buddy. Thanks, DB. We're going
No
to
worries,
move on
Chris.
next one.
Enjoy the show. Thanks,
All
guys.
right, later.
At least you get a drink
Okay,
of water.
guys.
So can I be back in 5 minutes?
All
Can
right,
you
all
talk
right.
amongst yourselves.
Take a
5
quick.
minutes for
We'll take a
what?
quick
What the-
break here.
what
We'll
is
take a
this
quick break.
scandal?
We'll be back. I gotta fix these things anyways.
Another break?
Well, we got. I mean,
Holy
we're not gonna
shit,
move
dude.
on to a CS topic without him. So we'll be right back.
Oh my god.
Oh, so we legitimately breaking? So I can go get some water too then.
All right, we're back. Gonna move on to after that 2-hour topic, I think we're gonna move on to one of our other topics. We're not gonna be able to cover all the topics we were planning on today, guys, because I don't want it to go over way too long for our guests here. So we're just gonna go ahead and talk about the DreamHack Winter CS:GO Championships, because I know Thorin and Scoots are big CS:GO guys, and Valve's doing some cool things with the championship. They're doing more of the crowdfunding type of prize pool that they kind of did with the international. They are selling these packs right here. Let me bring it up real quick. Where is it? Actually, here's some more information on it. It's a $250,000 prize pool, and again, the proceeds are from in-game purchases. That you can buy this pack that's full of a bunch of different guns and that sort of thing. But so I guess
Skins, I think.
sorry, what was that, Thor?
Skins.
Skins, yeah, skins.
Yep.
So why don't you guys talk about it a little bit? I don't know a ton about the actual competition, but they announced this obviously a week ago, and it was big news. It was like the biggest thing for Counter-Strike, I think. Is it ever or in a long time? I'm not sure exactly.
Probably not ever.
No,
But certainly,
the old
I-
CPLs used to be like 200,000 prize pool, $250,000 prize pool.
Okay.
The main thing about this is that the one thing CS:GO has missed is it had no major. When I say major, I mean like an ESWC, like an IEM, like a champ. It had ESWC, but it wasn't of the same stature. Okay, we need like a world championship in Counter-Strike Go. We don't have it at the moment. What we have instead is we have like these small European tournaments mainly, where like first prize is like 6,000, 8,000 euros, and so it's okay money. It's enough to support like good teams in the scene, but it doesn't. Even when the team wins one of those events, you never feel like it's like earth shattering. Like winning one of these events doesn't make you the best team in the world, because you look at the last 5 of the identical type of events. So what we've needed in Counter-Strike Go was a real world championship, so that at least we could have that aspect where we had the big show once per year, where even the casual guy could watch that one and he wouldn't have to watch all the other 15, you know. And so in theory, this can be it now, because it's Dreamhack's an established tournament, and also now they've got the prize purse. And so that's the key thing. And also Valve are hinting, or whoever, HPE or whoever it is, that if this goes well, then they'll do it again a couple of times. So that in theory, this could be an actual circuit of maybe 2 or 3 per year that they could have, which would actually then give like the prestige element of Counter-Strike back to the game, where that's what it lost going to CSGO. Because in 1.6, it was still in IEM, it was still in WCG, it was still in ESWC. But when it came to CSGO, all these other tournaments exist, Dreamhack, all this stuff, but those big tournaments left it behind because CS wasn't big enough anymore. So really, maybe Dreamhack can become the new IEM of Counter-Strike, what it meant to Counter-Strike, you know.
SirScoots, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. You know, when the game was announced, I think a lot of us hardcores were like, oh yeah, you know. And to make the StarCraft analogy, we're getting our StarCraft 2, right? We're getting it. Yes, we got, because I wasn't a Source fan. I thought it was a bastardization of the game I loved, so I never gave a shit about Source. And this was going to be the one, right? The tie it all together. And when it got released, and I was in the beta, I wasn't that. I was like, oh no, here we go again. This is not what we wanted. It has all these things missing. But over the course of its development, you know, they patch this thing nearly every week now. It's come tremendously a far way. Forget the Valve throwing money at it now. Just the development of the game to make it feel better, run better, look better, play better. It's just gotten vastly better as a game. A lot less like Source and a lot more like 1.6, even though it's not on the engine. It'll never be 1.6. It's a different engine. Never feel that pure to us purists in that sense. So I think it's great. And then that starts to improve, and then we all sit here and go, well, fuck, look at all the cool shit they're doing with Dota 2. Look at Compendium. Look at International. They don't care about CS. They don't care about us. They don't care. And now they've started to flip that switch, right? So they're still updated. Like a patch came out fucking yesterday. It was a great patch. Or 2 days ago, Wednesday, great patch. Spectator tool improvements, all sorts of shit. And now, you know, yeah, they're not doing a compendium. They're not giving out $1 million+ dollars. But it's a start with these esports crates and how they're doing the Operation Bravos and all these different things to help map makers and content creators and skin makers. And like their workshop is starting to look very much like a Dota workshop. That's cool as shit. Just for the development of the game and the audience of the game, let alone the esports side of it, just as people that want to play and care about this game. And so I think it's great. And again, I think Dreamhack might be the first ones to tell you, and Thorin can certainly back me up. Years ago, it was not the most popular tournament. It was, you know, Dreamhack's whole focus on esports is recent history in the sense of Dreamhack as a company, and it's great. Yeah, but for a while there, you know, it was like, oh, we don't want to go to Dreamhack. It's a terrible event. It's in the middle of nowhere. The prize purse isn't that great. Again, it was one of the other events you went to when you cared about CPLs, IEMs, WCGs, esports World Cups. And now, in all their esports, Dreamhack has flipped it. Like they are one of the best shows in town, and that's great. So for them to get the first mantle of this, to distribute this prize purse and throw a tournament, and again, Sweden, the home of fucking Counter-Strike in a lot of ways, is great. I do hope they spread the wealth. I hope people like IEM get a shot to not only get some prize purse, but then they do what they do with everything else. So maybe we see CSGO at IEMs right next to the StarCrafts and the League of Legends again. So I think it's really, really cool. Again, no one knows Valve's long-term plans. Fuck, Valve is very quiet. We all know this. But I think it's really, really cool. I am really, really excited about Dreamhack Winter for all sorts of reasons for that community. And again, during the middle of this show, I kept looking over here because I was watching Fnatic playing Nip. You know, that's some old-school fucking names to me, right? Nip beat them. But Nip lost yesterday, which, again, totally separate thing. That's fucking amazing. I love Nip, but they lost to VG on LAN. That's fucking great for the scene. So I'm really excited about it. I can't say too much. I am allowed to say that I have been hired by Dreamhack finally After years of bribery and dirty photos of Robert, I finally was able to use my blackmail skills to get a gig with Dreamhack. So I will be part of this event. I can't speak to all that I'm involved in, but very, very cool. So very, very excited for the future of CSGO. Still got a long way to go. Like, I'm not here blowing smoke up anyone's ass. The game is not 1.6. It's got a lot of things that are still like, whoa. But again, work in progress and exciting for guys like me.
I mean, in terms of Dreamhack, this is like a big news for them, actually, because like you're saying there, people from Counter-Strike have a totally different view of Dreamhack than people from StarCraft 2 do.
Yeah,
because in StarCraft 2, Dreamhack is one of the biggest organizations now, and you think of that as like a premier foreign tournament. In Counter-Strike, Dreamhack was like maybe like 7th down on the rung, you know. There were bigger events that would be like one-offs in China or something that were bigger than Dreamhack. We used to think of it as like, oh, I guess you could go to Dreamhack as well next month, but, you know, this tournament you focused on this event, and then afterwards there'll be another one. It was like an also ran. Whereas now, in theory, it could be the biggest CSGO event. And one of the key things in the context of why I'm saying the game needs a major is because, unfortunately, Counter-Strike fans were sold a totally false bill of goods. Because here was how they sold CSGO to us. I'm talking about esports people as well here. They told us, listen, guys, Counter-Strike 1.6, okay, you're getting good numbers, but they're not as good as League of Legends. They're not as good as StarCraft 2. So, you know, if you want to stay in esports, you're going to need to switch to a new game because, you know, you need new graphics for the, you know, all that bullshit. You need the graphics for the sponsors. And then, you know, new fans don't care about an old game. They want a new game. And, you know, oh, there's the two scenes, CSGO and CS Source. So listen, guys, here's what we'll do. If you guys switch to CSGO, we'll combine the two communities. We'll have a super community. We'll have all these new fans playing it. We'll have new graphics, so all these big new sponsors will be involved. There'll be even bigger tournaments and it'll be like even better. And then they switched over. The game wasn't as good, so there were less people. There was some new people, but not that many. The two communities combining into one, yeah, that happened because what happened is half of them just fucked off and then half just went together and now you got one again, but not quite as big. And so everything was on a smaller scale, not only than what existed before, but what we'd been promised and what we'd been sold this bill of. And now it looks like it's almost impossible unless this sort of thing happens or Valve themselves pump money into IEM for people like IEM to pick up CS again as a main game. It's probably never going to happen. So unfortunately, on the esports side of things, people really got the short end of the stick with CSGO coming out. And now they just had to kind of settle like, okay, I guess we have like a circuit of like, you know, maybe like 12 events a year that are just small. And we have to get used to there only being like 4 really good teams because, you know, beyond that, you've only got the semi-pros, and then you don't really have people who are all going night and day trying to be a pro to be the top player. So in theory, say this event happens now, first of all, it would be the focal point in CSGO history to begin with. So it'll be the big tournament everyone can talk about. But then if it goes well and you have a couple more tournaments, now, in theory, people can actually go pro who now are only semi-pro and they're just living off like coming 8th and then they have to do school and then they go to the next event in 2 months and maybe they come like 5th there. Now those guys can go pro as well. So again, it helps like the whole scene grow up a level. And I don't know that it'll ever get to what it had been sold as before because that seems unrealistic to me. I thought it seemed unrealistic before and it definitely hasn't manifest. Yeah. But it will definitely do something to the scene because the game itself is already... It's okay enough in what exists that it could be an esport. It just doesn't have the financial backing because at the moment everyone makes this choice like, well, I have this much money and I can choose where I spend it. Do I put it in League of Legends, StarCraft 2, CSGO? If it was like there's direct money just for CSGO, then it can be its own game, you know. But it'll never win that discussion there. Like, which is going to be more bang for my buck?
Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, I mean, a prime example, like when I was with Evil Geniuses, like I joined EG and Counter-Strike still ruled the day 3 years ago for the team, you know, like StarCraft 2 wasn't out yet. It was all about, you know, and again, the game was already dying. Like, we were the best team in North America, but you'd go to Europe and our boys would get our ass kicked, right? But we held on to this little, like, North American crown for a while, but numbers dip. And you know, you have to, you know, Alex and I went, well, fuck, winning ESEA in North America in front of 5,000 people on a stream doesn't pay the bills for 5 guys to fly anywhere, for a salary, for hotels. You can't support it because you love the game and be charitable. And so EG drops their teams. Everybody slowly starts to drop their teams, right? And so I look at what Thorin just said in this new reemergence in these majors. This is the kind of shit that gets the team marketing dollars back involved. And yeah, Nip jumped in already and other people have jumped in. But like a guy like Alex Garfield doesn't care that he's a Counter-Strike fan. He cares about the numbers to his sponsors. He'll never have a Counter-Strike Go team if those numbers don't hit a certain threshold, right? You can't make money on nostalgia. And to Thorin's point, I don't know if it'll ever get back up there because it's a totally different kind of game to watch. It's not casual. It's not free to play. You know, it doesn't have 12 million people playing it every day to where 500,000 people would tune in. 65,000 people were watching yesterday's tournament, though, which is good. But this is the start of guys like Alex Garfield caring again, right? Because they care about numbers. They care about marketing, views, and all those things, you know. So, and it grows when players can be supported to go play it, right? And that happens with prize purse, and it happens with guys like Alex having people descend, you know, places like a Dreamhack and an IEM, a circuit. And when IEM dropping CS was our last straw, I was like, no, just winning in North America doesn't pay the bills. So goodbye, Jordan and Fraud and everybody. It sucked. But that's the nature of it, you know? And it's the same, you know, like for a lot of people, Quake got killed by Counter-Strike, and Counter-Strike got killed by StarCraft, and StarCraft's getting killed by League, and will Dota kill League? They don't really relate like that, but that's kind of a perception of marketing dollars because they do. Every team's got a limited spend, right? Just like fucking Thorin said. And somewhere along the way, something loses out. And again, like this is the game that got me here, and I went away for a little while because there was nothing to fucking watch. So I just hope that DreamHack leads to IEM, leads to fucking MLG 4 times a year in North America, and ESEAs and WCGs, because then all these teams and the teams that want to be these teams go, oh, we gotta have a Counter-Strike team again. Fuck, let's do it, and it just starts to slowly grow again. Are we ever going to be like League? Are we ever going to be like League? No fucking way. StarCraft will never have League numbers. So, you know, it's just, and that's okay, right? Different sports, you know, back to the real world, they don't all have the same viewership and they all survive. So, yeah.
I think I'm going to have to disagree with Scoots there. You can clearly see where Dustin Browder said earlier that the rise of other games has no impact on the audience of other games. I'm not sure where you're getting your numbers from, Scoots,
God.
Oh, Dustin Browder. Yeah.
Well, so this event, you know, is yet another initiative for for Valve doing a crowdfunding type of thing for the prize pool. So with the prize pool, it's 250 guaranteed, right? And if they get more from the selling of these packs, is it going to be over 250?
I haven't seen anything like that. I think it's just 250K.
No. Yeah, I think they killed. You know, that kills wrong word. I think they stopped that promotion, took that money, so to speak, and said this is now going to DreamHack. But I can buy a case right now, an esports case, that is going into a new kitty that they have not said who gets it next. Right?
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, because it's not like a compendium deal where that's a set price purse for DreamHack. It won't keep growing. So again, the question is, where does Valve give that money out? You know, obviously DreamHack got some. Again, I hope, you know, that IEM is on that list. And again, I'm a North American guy. So, and I love Craig and I love ESEA and what they do for the scene. And they've never stopped supporting Counter-Strike over here. But I certainly, you know, hope that bigger, the MLG throws a much bigger stagey type event than Craig does. You know, there's no fault to Craig. And I would love to see it on that circuit because that's a different kind of, because again, to the Alex Garfields of the world, that's the exposure he wants, not Craig's exposure. And again, that's what the game needs to keep lifting is the bigs to care again, or to care for the first time, if you will.
All right. Any other comments? Thorin, you got any last comments on this?
I mean, I would just say, like I described with the League of Legends example, the reason why I was arguing in favor of certain things in the competition is because things don't have to be blown out and have millions and millions and millions of people watching. They just have to be good enough where there's the best teams can get to the tournament and they have the sponsors to get there and they have enough time to practice. Once you have that framework in place, then the people who really are hardcore into the game can enjoy it regardless. Now, the other stuff is great for the casuals and all the rest of it, but we just need the infrastructure in place. And that was one thing in CS that was missing, which was the major. And so at least having one a year would be nice. And if you could have 2 or 3, that's about as much as you could ask for at this point, I think.
Agreed.
All right. So definitely good news for
Are
this.
you doing it, Thorin? Please tell me they're talking to you about being like a color commentator, an analyst guy. Because I think
they would never ask for me about that.
Oh,
see, I definitely.
First of all, I'll probably be there doing the interviews anyway. But that's the thing. When I mentioned before, as an example to Destiny, that I used to do commentary in Counter-Strike, and I was explaining it was like the style he was talking about, quantifying stuff. I was probably the most unpopular caster in the history of Counter-Strike. Like, people hated my stuff because of the fact I would say stuff like, this team has only a 30% chance to win, but they wanted to believe it was the underdog and they were going to do it, and you're hating on my team, and people hated that style. But in my opinion, it only looks bad because one person's doing it and everyone's trained to listen to the other guys who are blowing smoke up their ass. If everyone does
stats,
it,
man.
then
stats are sports, right? And you're good about that. You were a stat in that sense. You're like your stats man, Bruno, when it came to Counter-Strike back then. You were pulling out facts. It wasn't your opinion. It was your opinion, but it was definitely based on your knowledge and your research that was fact based. Like game sense stats and all those things. Again, it's also, which we didn't really talk about. I think we're missing. Like, I think what Bruno does for Dota is one of the coolest things ever. I mean, it's black and white. Here's the stat. His team's 100% when he picks that champion. End of story. There's no opinion. That's cool as shit, And I think we need more of that in a variety of these esports. Like, give us the facts to back up why you have that opinion, Mr. Expert Caster, and I'm more apt to believe you. And then I'll go research
the key
stuff
thing.
like that.
Lots of analytics tools out there.
It's not that anyone had to be right when they were doing the casting. That's where people fall down. Like, that's why I think some of these casters in StarCraft 2 are trying to hedge their bets and not go anyway, because they don't want at the end of the game it to sound like they'd said something earlier on that was totally wrong. Whereas actually it isn't whether you're right or wrong, it's how good your reasoning is. If the reasoning is really interesting, it doesn't even have to be correct, by the way. If the reasoning is just interesting, then it builds the real storyline that things can play into, and then as a result you have all these set points in the game where it's like, oh, was my reasoning correct here, or did this subtle point that I tried to bring out earlier actually come into play or not? If it didn't, then maybe that in itself is a talking point, like, oh, you see, they shot down that element and they couldn't actually bring it in. See, that's why I say that the analysis guy, like I told Total Biscuit, he doesn't actually have to have anything prepared. His brain is the computer that takes in the game and then spits out the analysis. So really the other guy should just be setting it up so that he's in the position to say the thing based on what's happening now. That's why you don't need all the showmanship for the analysis, in my opinion. You just need it for the play-by-play.
Okay, very good point. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of analytics tools out there. They just people aren't using them, especially StarCraft 2. I mean, I've even been working with somebody on an analytics tool called SpawningTools.com, and we try to spit out this really really great information for folks, and I've been trying to get casters to use it, and just haven't had the time to really sit down with them and walk them through it. But I think that's an amazing, really great comment there, Thorin. Okay, let's move on. This last topic, we're not going to do Q&A today, guys, because just
come on.
No Q&A today, guys, because I mean, it's like
We're
we're already 50
talk
minutes
about
in.
DeMuslim's emo blog.
Y'all want to go all
Which
the way?
one?
If you guys want to go all the way, I'll sit here. We'll do it.
I mean, I can keep talking. I mean,
if you guys got the time, I got the
currently
time.
freelancer, so.
It's up to you, Steven. Up to you.
It's up to
me,
yeah, I don't give a fuck.
All right.
I mean, since
Well, okay,
we-
let's go
It's not
through
about
WCSEU
Counter-Strike,
first.
you have to
Let's go through WCSEU first, because I know Kenny gets listening, and he's like, did I miss it? Did I miss it?
Blame him.
So WCSEU ended obviously a week and a half ago, and it kind of, it's the conclusion for at least the ESL guys for WCS for 2013. So I kind of want to just do a quick review over it. MMA obviously won this last season over MC, but it's more so just reviewing the 3 seasons and how they did, because I think overall between all the partners, ESL was probably the most consistent with their product. And they had some snags in the beginning with qualifiers and stuff.
You mean out of the Western ones, yeah?
Yeah, the Western ones. Okay, Western ones.
Because GSL
Sure.
killed them, let's face it.
Yeah, okay. GSL obviously they were good too, but
Korean
all right. So thoughts on how ESL did. Thorin, what do you think?
I actually am not as bowled over as some other people. I thought they were good. Like, I don't think they were bad. Okay, I don't know why people have harped on them that much. I thought their job was decent, but I don't know. There's something about it was just a bit weird for me. Like, the way they kind of went for like a hybrid of having a pure studio and having like an audience. So what they actually had, I don't know if ever people know this, I don't know how they've panned the camera around, but if you go to that area of the ESL studio, they've literally just done that trick where you just fill a camera angle with people and then that's it. So like there's a camera angle like that and there's people sat there, but then that's it. There's about like 30 people in the whole place. And so they try to use that for like a crowd reaction to cut to that, and then they have it in a studio. Like, I'm not really sure what the actual idea with that was, or what the goal was, and so as a result, whether or not it was successful, it was just a little bit weird to me. For me, I'd have either had like the finals have a real stage with the crowd, because the benefit of the crowd is to have quite a lot and to have people be noisy and loud and have electric atmosphere and all this stuff. Or go the other way and have the pure studio, because then the players don't get bothered by anything and it's just about the game and all the viewers are online. Either method makes sense to me. It was just a weird hybrid between the two. I have to admit, the main criticism people give of WCS EU is that we feel like if ESL doesn't do it, then it'll be Dreamhack who gets the job. And I can't say that ESL did such an insanely good job that I definitely want them to do it again next year. I wouldn't be averse to them trying out Dreamhack, because I don't know. I imagine Dreamhack would probably do it like event style, you know, with a proper crowd and stuff. So I would be interested to see what would happen there.
You know, ESL did host the last season's finals, right? And they hosted it at Gamescom. So they did do that.
Yeah, but that also wasn't very good though, because that was like, dude, I hate events at games conventions. It's the shittest thing about European esports. Like, games conventions aren't the place where you want an esports event, because you got all these people milling around who have nothing to do with the event, and who are just passing through the building. And then even worse, let's say one of those people who's just a random guy at this German tech fair, let's say he walks up and then he decides, I'm going to watch the StarCraft 2 match, and then he sits down there, and then some guy who's an actual StarCraft 2 fan who came to watch StarCraft 2, but he's 5 minutes late, he doesn't get to sit in that seat. Like, there's all sorts of stupid problems.
There are, but the reasoning, when we had Red Eye on here, the reasoning for it was more of a budgeting issue. Just, you know, it's going to cost more to go and rent a brand new place.
Let's bring Dreamhack in, let's see what they can do.
Oh, man. Scoots, or actually, Steven, what do you think? Steven, what do you think of WCS EU overall, if you have an opinion on it?
It was amazing. I read all the comments on Reddit. It seems like everybody liked it. Congratulations. I'm so proud.
All right, moving on. Scoots,
wow,
what do you think? What do you think
that
about
dollar shaped sponsorship. Who are you, man? Sell out!
Dude, I haven't seen WCS.
He just didn't watch any of it, Scoots. Let's treasure it straight.
Oh, okay. Again, to me, like, I've been watching ESL for a very long time, and it just felt like an extension of their other studio stuff. It looked the same, it smelled the same, it felt the same. So in that sense, it felt comfortable, I guess, because I've watched them do Counter-Strike, I've watched them do all sorts of stuff, and you know, and both their studios kind of have a similar look with the blues and the whites. So I felt like they did. You know, I think their production values are fine. Like, from the nerd behind the cameras, I think, you know, they do fine. They do great. Nothing wrong with that. I got no production issues.
Let me ask you a question, Scoots, quickly.
Yeah.
You know, in 2012, where Dreamhack did the WCS EU and they did the finals as this big event, and people remember it as one of the best events of the year. They did it in the Globe Arena, and they had all this. The production value was very high. When you think of that as the European final, when you heard WCS was announced and they were going to have these big regional finals, it would lead into big seasons each time, don't you expect a big show from that? Like, has it delivered on that level?
No, again, that's an absolutely valid point. You know, doing the regular season in the studio audience environment, if you will, where it's nice and contained, and it's a lot of matches for a long time, so obviously you can't load into the Globe every day, right? Makes perfect sense, but you're absolutely right. I think, and again, I don't know why, but the finals of these regions should have been blowouts, right? Iron Squid style, that, like you just said, Globe style, like that. Why not, right? Now, I don't know if it's financial or, hey, we've invested all this money in the studio, we got to use it. I think IEM or ESL, however you want to call them, or Dreamhack, if they would have gone to outside venues, would have both nailed it with that electric level, right? Because you can think about where was the one in Poland where they did the stadium event. So they can do standalone stadium events, the production wise. They can nail that shit. But yeah, it felt like I was tuning in. It felt like I was tuning into Week 5, right? It would have been the same thing if Riot would have. You know. Yeah, if Riot would have never gone to the Staples or the Galen and they just did all their their finals in their own little studios. But they started ramping that process up earlier, I guess. Now again, maybe it was financial. I don't know. But of course, it's always going to be hyper if you can put thousands of people in the room than 30 people on those little benches or whatever it was. But again, production-wise, I think they nailed it. I think I think they have a great product. I think Dreamhack has a great product. I think in some regards, MLG has a great product. Again, I'm a production nerd, not so much always what the guys are saying, but how they show shit, right? Like, I'll watch sports I don't even give a shit about these days just to see How they bring lower thirds up? What is their scoreboard like? What are they covering? How do they give sponsor? So again, I think in that sense they did great. I have the same problem when MLG does stuff in their studio and that's all they do, and that's the end of it. That should lead to something bigger and better. If the grand finals look just like day one, where's that extra Where's that extra excitement and hype, right?
I mean, just in terms of WCS itself, that's one thing that has been lacking in the overall structure. Was no matter how many people criticize WCS, when I heard it announced, I thought, oh well, if Blizzard themselves are going to get involved and they're going to put money in, and there's going to be an actual structure, and we're going to have European finals, North American finals, Korea finals, building into a massive final. I thought wow, this is going to be the biggest thing in StarCraft 2 history. Some of these events, even the season finals, some of these have less hype around them than a GSL final or a big MLG back in the day. They've got certain aspects right, but then they haven't managed to make the prestige element really huge. Think of the season ending finals, because we've got the third one coming up soon. So the season 1 final was the one they had in Korea. And as I remember, it had some weird scheduling, and then because there wasn't many Western people weren't that interested, and the whole thing just felt that never got to the level it felt like it was going to. It should have been the biggest event of the year. Then you got to the season 2 finals. Okay, that was bigger. That had a better online at least. A lot of good players. That one was good, but again, was it the best event of the whole year? I'm still not sure it did blow everything else out the water. I think maybe even Dreamhack Bucharest was bigger in the sense that it had the stacked tournament. I don't know. It's very debatable. Whereas when you have this structure leading pyramids into pyramids, the top should be absolutely insane. Should be like the League of Legends World Championship should have been. The big event with the millions of dollars in the stadium and everything. But that's the one thing that seems to be a bit off about WCS to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of agree with that, but still, I really appreciate the consistency that they've had. I mean, the staff that they hired, Red Eye always being the host, those casters are there every single time. If we did Dreamhack, I think Dreamhack would have a different crew each time, even at these events, because that's kind of what they do, and that's their thing too, which is kind of cool. But they really don't, though.
Their core crew is Dreamhackers. Their production crew is not all freelancers.
Their production crew, but not who they have for casting.
Well, you'd be the same, but they'd hire They'd hire a lot of the same people probably if they had the gig, right?
They probably would.
But I mean, I agree with you. It's nice the consistency of it. You're going to see Red Eye. You're going to see an Apollo or whoever they've hired. Todd for a while. When he was not competing. So yeah, what you're going to. I mean, again, consistency is often underrated, but their product is very, very consistent. And again, you could say the same thing. DreamHack's product is now very, very consistent. A lot of people will say consistently cooler, hyper, crazier. And again, I also don't know. And again, this is just me totally theory crafting here. You got a company that's very much backed by an Intel in some of the stuff they do, not all the stuff they do. And I just wonder if that has made them overall again, DreamHack is Robert, and he's a crazy fuck, right? And then you got ESL, and they're a little bit more corporate-y and a little bit more buttoned up, and again, nothing wrong with that, but I wonder if that's just a corporate culture that, again, DreamHack is that wild fucking uncle, and ESL Turtle is the guy that went to Harvard and got his shit right, and he's prim and proper, right? And I don't know what MLG is in that analogy, but and again, I think they both put out great products. They definitely have a different vibe to them. They definitely do.
MLG is the rich boy socialite party guy who's just, he's blowing all daddy's money, and when it runs out, the party's over, and, he's making a big show now. He's got all the hookers, he's got all the DJs, he's got all the lights, but when the show's over, and that's it.
All right, I'll let you go with that one. I thought you were going to go frat boy for a minute, but that was close. All right.
No, I don't get frat boy that much from Axlab and Axel Toss.
No.
That's for sure.
With the drinking on stream, maybe these days.
That's okay. That's fair. That's fair. Okay.
Are we going to talk about the actual tournament then?
The finals? Go ahead. You can talk about it. I mean, the finals. I mean, I can talk about the finals, but
I mean, the finals was like a wash-up rerun of something from 2011 or something.
Yeah, no, seriously, right? It was
the funny thing is, though, it's I've noticed people have a really strange way of thinking how good players are in the West. That doesn't even make that much sense to me. Because what they'll do is, someone who was really high in GSL in the past, and now they're not very good on a GSL level, but they're still decent on a foreigner level, gets treated like they're shit and they're at the absolute bottom of their career and, they have no chance and they're never going to come back. But there'll be a foreigner who never even ascended to that level, who's actually similar to them now. But because he's higher than his old level, just relative, he'll be talked up as like he's still got a lot of chance and he's going to do some great things. And so I actually felt like MMA winning was almost underwhelming in a way because people had like written him off so much that he could never be a good player again. He'd never win a big event, etc. And so it was actually quite a good storyline in as much as he'd come semifinals of the last one. And then this time he wins it finally. But yeah, it's just quite strange. That's one of the problems I feel like with the other WCS regions aside from Korea. People complain that the Koreans are in it, but actually the real problem is that mainly the Koreans who are in it are the ones who aren't good enough to win GSL anymore. And so really it's like, even though they're big names still, they're like a tier below. And so when they then win the other regions is when it makes the other regions look a bit bad. And so I thought this was a good tournament. I mean, one thing I don't really like about the structure of WCS EU and NA is that the online component plays a massive effect on who makes it to the round of 16. Because if you look at the round of 8 of all of the WCS NA and WCS EU tournaments, the foreigners there are almost like you just get a pack of 10 and you put 3 in the first one, 3 in the next one, 3 in the next. You know what I mean? Like it's almost random as to who makes it there. And the results just seem to have no consistency to them at all from the foreign players, that is. And I think, unfortunately, the online component plays a factor in that. Now, what I would like, I had an idea for this. I hate online qualifiers. So my system for getting rid of online qualifiers is to use other real events in the style of like WCS points. So what you do is these other players all attend real events anyway, like Dreamhack if that's their local event, MLG. What you do is you give them point tournaments and then you qualify the top 16 into the WCS and then it's all offline. That way you get the real top 16 players in Europe, in theory, to your offline event instead of having, the luck of what the draw is online. And then do you get this one guy who plays Protoss online and maybe he just all-ins and then you have this guy who's trying to play Zerg from Korea and like there's too many factors, that can make the actual end product not as good because your filter to get people to the offline stage isn't such a great one, I don't think. And that's like a problem I see with this event because the games themselves will be of a higher level if you ensure the best teams get there, players rather.
Yeah, no, I think that wouldn't be a bad system. I was talking to Adabisi a little bit about just even the grand finals. I would have liked the point system to be a little bit different, but yeah, I think that kind of system would be pretty cool.
What tweak do you want?
What?
What tweak do you want?
What tweak? Well, I know you're going to disagree with it because I know what you want in the finals is the very best. But what I was proposing is more of a point system per region, and then just bringing in the top from those regions to the finals, and enough that it would cover the best players. So it wouldn't.
I don't mind that as long
be,
as there's enough.
Yeah,
that's the thing. As long as say there's like 8 Koreans and then there's 8 North American, then there's 8 European, because then at least there's enough Koreans where they still could be top 4 if they really were the best region or something. My problem is when you do it Olympics style, you end up with these retarded scenarios where say Korea was like 10 times better than they even are now. Then if you only allow 3 players to go, then in theory, with the way the bracket goes, you could only have 1 Korean in the final, which is a mistake there because then it's making out like the second best player was this guy from Sweden or whatever, whereas it's unlikely that maybe that realistically was what it was. So you have to allow, you can have a mix of the two, but you need enough, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, guys. Well, I think that's going to be it for WCS EU, so we'll see what happens in 2014 with WCS in general and particularly EU. We'll see if ESL still gets the gig or DreamHack.
Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see not only if they change any of their providers, but what they change format-wise, region lock, no region lock, a whole lot of rumors floating around. So,
yep.
And I did see a post from Kim from Blizzard on Reddit saying that like she said soon, and then she clarified it like this week. Well, I don't know if that means like today because today's Friday, but they were going to release some info.
Gotta be looking Reddit real quick, see if anything's been announced.
So hopefully, they give us a little bit more idea of their structure for the next one.
Yeah, I know they've been doing a lot of
yeah, TB just said
picking up feedback and that sort of thing. Yeah, they've been secret meetings and all this business, right? So hopefully
actually, in terms of structure, one thing I really don't like about their system that I think they copied from GSL. So in GSL they had it so that like it's the same as actually how they used to do in Brood War on the OSL and MSL, right? What people didn't know is if you only watched an OSL or an MSL or a GSL Code S, it looks like you have this tournament and then you have a couple of weeks, then you have the next tournament, then you have a couple of weeks, then you have the next tournament. But actually, to allow that to happen, what you do, and in Broodwalk was a couple of months between. What instead you do is you have, because it's feeding in all these amateurs and people who are lower through qualification systems, you have the qualification systems running from the second that this tournament ends. The very lowest level of the qualification starts to ramp up, and then you qualify people into the next tournament. Well, the problem is for WCS EU and NA, because that element started even with the players who'd finished like top 16, they again were immediately put into the qualification, and then they were waiting two games along on the bracket. It meant like there never was like a break where you feel like, okay, that person won that tournament. We have a little while to reflect on it. Now we go into the next tournament. It feels like next day, we're back into the cycle again and going again. And I think that actually, to some degree, takes away from how epic and the prestige of winning these big things, you know.
Yeah.
Because it feels like,
I agree.
okay, that was yesterday. Right, we're done with that. Like on to tomorrow's. It's the round of 48 of Challenger now, you know. I feel like they've almost put like too much content in there. They should probably space it out a bit more, I think. Or
Well, that's the problem with
Well, kind of like the idea of an off season, like you see again in.
Well, that's why I'd like qualification from other tournaments, because then you can have this. Then you can have WCS be a distinct thing, and then the other tournaments, qualification is going to be tied in with how you perform in that tournament anyway. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone there. But you don't make it feel like WCS lasts forever, but then stuff goes in between it as well.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about structure of WCS like forever. So, I've never been in love with just this type of league feel to it versus more of a tournament by tournament majors type of feel for StarCraft, because the community goes nuts over the tournaments. We don't go nuts over the weekly content. You know, yeah, there's like 10,000 to 12, 15,000 people watching it like on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but you know, we all thrive during the Fridays through Sundays, the Dreamhacks and that sort of things. That's when
especially
we all get
because
excited.
If say we existed back in esports of 2003, we'd have loved a league then, because we only had content every 3 to 6 months. So now we need something every week. But now we have tournaments in all games that go on almost monthly, you know. So we actually don't need the constant drip feed, because we can already have tournaments be in those spaces. And we all agree the tournament is the exciting thing, because you watch the whole tournament, you get it done in 3 or 4 days or a week or whatever, and it's incredible, and then you move on to the next one, you know.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, does that translate into numbers for sponsors, you know, and that sort of thing. I think more consistent hourly type of content each day will net larger numbers, I think. But it's a different story. That's a totally different thing. But, okay, let's move on to the next topic. Next topic we got is the DeMuslim blog, Stephen, that Stephen was referring to. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Ben DeMuslim, he wrote in his Facebook account this blog entry, and he kind of talked about just his experience in WCS, particularly WCS qualifier. He lost to Alicia, and then he kind of went into really talking about StarCraft and some of the issues that he thinks is wrong with StarCraft, the game itself, and then even going a little bit beyond that, he starts talking about just really how the WCS is affected and just everything like that. But mostly it had to do with just the game itself. I think the interesting part, and kind of design from a design angle. Did you guys read it? All three of you guys read it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on it? Stephen, I'll get your thoughts since you didn't have a lot to say during the WCS stuff. So what do you think of
Actually,
Muslims?
I don't really even have much to say here. He was mad as fuck, dude.
Yeah.
He's just mad.
Yeah. You could tell. Yeah.
Mad as
Yeah,
fuck.
he's definitely mad. He's definitely emotional when he wrote it. Obviously right after a loss. But do you think he made any good points about the game?
I mean, yeah, but we're opening up like a whole can of worms if we want to start talking about the design flaws of StarCraft 2 and the races and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Thorin, what do you think? I know we were talking a little bit about this yesterday.
I mean, on the actual topic of the blog itself, it was I don't really understand what the point of it was, aside from just complaining, because basically, like you just said there, all you're really doing is sort of complaining about some effects of problems with the game itself, how it's designed, like how all-ins work and how hard they are to stop and how hard they are to scout and know exactly. These are problems with StarCraft 2 as a game. They're not problems of the scene or anything like that.
Yeah.
And plus, those sorts of complaints don't really make as much sense to me right now, because there've been periods for me, StarCraft 2, the reason why I never got the hype at the beginning of like, this is the best game ever, is because it was shit when it came out, and it's gotten better and better and better and better as it goes through. Now, obviously, if you don't like ZVP, there was maybe a period where you think it was bad at the end of Wings of Liberty. But even so, in general, the game itself gets better. Now, I think the game has some huge flaws mechanically in terms of how it's designed, but these things, to me, have always existed, but maybe even worse before. Like some of the all-ins you could do at the beginning of StarCraft were absolutely ludicrous, and the maps were so terrible. So actually, to make these complaints now does seem a bit like sour grapes. It almost sounds like DeMuslim is like a much more civil British Idra, because what he's doing basically is actually like complaining in his blog.
Oh boy,
about
you
how-
hate to
So
hear
actually,
that. That's for
well,
sure.
no, actually, because, and I don't even know if Thorin understands how right he is, but like, there's a thought. So when you look at somebody like Idra or maybe DeMuslim, I don't actually know about DeMuslim, but the little bit that I can gather from reading this blog, which granted is making a lot of assumptions, people like Idra, when you view a game like StarCraft 2, what they want it to be is they want it to be such that both sides are following a similar metagame and that whoever executes better wins. They literally want it to be a battle of mechanics, and that's it. If I have better mechanics than you, I should always win. I will 100% of the time I will win the game because we're both following the meta and how it should be played, blah, 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 blah. So whenever you try to talk about the strategic element, which in StarCraft 2 is already incredibly minor, when they want to when you introduce that at all to them, they become very upset or very flustered or very it's no longer a fun game to them.
Well, just look at the part in the blog where he said that line about even if he wins with an all-in, he doesn't feel like he deserved to win. Like, these are such telling phraseology.
Because when they definitely. That one was very telling. And actually, that's what I base most of this on, is that when people like Idra and possibly DeMuslim, when they view the game, they just want it to be, like right now, Idra's favorite matchup is ZVZ. It's probably always been ZVZ, except for when it crosses really popular. Because all he wants to do, or the old ZVT, where it's just like mutiling blink every single game. Execute. And Indra had the same problems in Brood War too. If you ever read any of the old write-ups on him complaining about losing matchups in Brood War, and what's his face, fucking Wreckroll, like annihilated him a couple times. Complaining about shit like that. But where Idra was the exact same in Brood War, such that there's this metagame on this map that every player has to follow, and I can only execute like this. Whoever executes the best will always win. And whenever you shift the focus of the game onto whoever executes better wins, to whoever chooses a different build order or applies some other thing outside of pure raw execution, those people are assholes, they're cheesers, they're not playing correctly, fuck the game, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And the problem is you get people like Idra and DeMuslim who have practiced that execution. It would be like, holy shit, not trying to bring all the fucking gym analogies up, but it's like you practice bench pressing like your entire fucking life, and you show up to the competition and they're doing squats. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, and that's the kind of, and it's like being able to bench 700 pounds, and it's a squat competition, because you get people like DeMuslim and Idra who my execution is perfect and I work so hard and I have all this shit that I'm ready to show people how fucking good I am, and then you get cheesed and you're not ready for it. It's like you can understand how incredibly mad they are, because they've spent all this time harnessing or all this time acquiring this power that they can't harness because all of it fails them when it comes time to dealing with unconventional strategies or cheese, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, and my take on it is just like you said, Destiny. But then I you lose me when I go, you've played this game for how long? You need to know, like, cheese is coming. So yes, you want your game to play this way, but that's not the game you play anymore, right?
Oh no!
They all should have realized that, like you said, they should have realized that years ago. That StarCraft 2 is not going to be about mechanics per se. There is random, there is all this shit with all-ins. Like two things that again, I'm a Counter-Strike guy, right? I've always been one. So two things freaked me out when I started to get into StarCraft. The absolute venom that would come at players who didn't GG. Like this gentleman game thing of like, oh, you have to GG, even though you don't believe it, you don't agree, it wasn't a good game in your mind. But if you don't GG, you're like Satan. Never got that, right? Because again, I come from a trash-talking world of Counter-Strike. Well, you said GG if it was GG, or you said you fucking suck if you felt that way, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. That's my thought on it. And then the whole idea of there's only one way to win. You got people playing a game for money, and you play to win. And I'm sorry. I love Ben. I love Greg. I really do like these guys, man. But like, you can't complain about a current game mechanic. And cheesing is a game mechanic. It is what you might practice your metagame till the cows come home. Guess what that guy practiced? How to cheese your metagame, right? And that's competition. And DeMuslim's take and Greg's take, they streamed a lot. They get scouted a lot. You know, but it's no one's fault but Ben that he. Okay, to the mechanics of it, like you said, Destiny. Okay, maybe it is easier to cheese. Maybe there's no way to stop it. Okay, well, that's the game you're playing. So either figure out how to fix it Either figure out how to cheese yourself to get wins. If you feel bad because you won a certain way, well, you're destined to probably never win on the big stage because you got to do whatever it takes to win. And if you can win $1 million cheesing, you should fucking start cheesing right now if that's what you want to do with your career. So
real fast from chat, I was wondering, does anybody have a link to that write-up that I want to say it was Reckroll or Reckful?
I could find
what
it.
The fuck is his name? There was a post where Idra. Basically, after Idril lost a series to some Zerg player, Idril played Terran and StarCraft Brewer. He lost series to a Zerg player, and he made a write-up complaining about how the Zerg played incorrectly, and that's why he lost or whatever, and all the bad things that the Zerg did. And Reckroll just, completely destroyed him about how, so you expected the Zerg to do this, and that's why you were going to for sure win. Why the fuck are you surprised that he did something different? I feel like that write-up was, the perfect illustration of the kind of shit that you should forward to people that complain about.
Well, yeah, I think the best player can do both, right? If it's advantageous for me right now against you to cheese you, I'm going to do it. His own teammates cheesed him. Conan has cheesed him.
Suppy did it.
Suppy has cheesed him because he knows that's how to beat him. Suppy wants to win. And again, you can put your honor cap on and your morality of playing the game properly cap all you want and go, well, Suppy's a fucking cheeser. He's not as good. I'm not going to debate it. I'm not going to debate that cheesing is harder to do or easier to do, but it is in the game. It is a way to win this game. If there are ways to cheese in other games, people would cheese. If there was a way to cheat, it's not cheating. I'm trying to think in Counter-Strike. Thorin, help me. What would be see, that's why it's foreign to me. I've never heard a Counter-Strike player go, oh well, fuck. They played. That strat was fucking cheesy. They triple smoke flashed us. Ran around the backside and planted. Well, who the fuck does that? That's bullshit.
There's no such thing as an illegitimate strategy in Counter-Strike.
It's
if
in
it
the
wins,
game,
it's the correct one.
I just don't. I feel bad for Ben because again, he takes offense to it. He doesn't like it. And does he make valid points that the game makes it easier to cheese this game versus Brood War? Absolutely, right? Absolutely. But again, you're on this level of this is your job. This is a job for you. Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things that you did bring up was streaming, right? And Ben is one of the most popular streamers right now in StarCraft 2, hands down. He might even be the most popular, and that's one thing that I think is unique to his position. Is because the community loves watching his stream, and he feels like he hasn't been streaming much at all lately because he feels like he's giving up too much information by streaming. So that type of dynamic, actually, Stephen, I'm kind of interested to hear what you think of that. Obviously, he's making revenue. Obviously, he has contractual obligations probably to stream also.
Absolutely.
I don't know. What do you think of that, Stephen? Having the conflict between not streaming and I guess becoming a better player and hiding your strategies, or maybe getting better results, and then streaming just to be more loved and more marketable and all that good stuff, and as well as trying to become a better player at the same time.
I mean, obviously there are pros and cons to both. You just have to figure out which you want to.
Is it worth given the numbers that he gets? Is it? What do you think?
I don't know what kind of numbers he gets, and I don't know what his personal goals for financing are. I don't know what kind of money he needs to make to be content or happy, whatever. So I'm not sure. In my opinion, I think that streaming is the more valid course because I don't want to say valid, but it's more financially stable, obviously, than trying to win championships. That kind of income can be incredibly hectic. That's why I stream full time. So,
right.
I mean, I don't know. It depends on the kind of money that he wants to make or what his personal financial goals are.
Thorin, what are your thoughts on that?
In general, the thing I don't like about the blog is that you're just complaining about things that you yourself, deep down, must know are the way the world is, and you're just wishing it wasn't the way, okay? So in terms of StarCraft 2 the game, I actually don't like StarCraft 2 the game very much. And this is one of the reasons I don't like the fact that there's a lot of scenarios in which once something has been determined, there isn't very much counterplay to it. And so all-ins are a good example, because in Brood War, there were certain players who were godlike at stopping all-ins, because the second they realized you were going to do it, either they had insane micro and they could somehow out-micro you and just win a fight that normally they'd lose, or they could instantly know how to switch to what they need to do to defend it. You can't do that as much in StarCraft 2, so that's true. I accept. I can understand where people like Idra and DeMuslim come from there. because they do want a gentleman's agreement. They want it to be like a duel where we agreed what weapons we're fighting with, and we're only going to fire like in turn after this moment. And the equivalent of StarCraft 2 is that like as they're getting the guns out of the box, one guy just like stabs them in the arm, and then they just like bleed out and die. And they're like, well, that wasn't the agreed game. Like, well, no, the game is like whoever kills the other one wins. And so the big problem here is like that whole aspect that he put in. Okay, maybe he was venting when he said like if he himself cheeses, he doesn't feel like he deserved the win. Like, well, then get the fuck out of StarCraft 2. That's the game of StarCraft 2. Did you see that guy Doc? He won like WCSEU, like cheesing people with all in PvP. What about Stardust? He did the same shit. Think how many Protoss players are really good at all-ins, but they're really good even amongst people who all in. It's not like they're just scrubs who do it and then they still beat the best player. The best player in the history of StarCraft 2, MVP, won so many tournaments, not because he was the best macro player, he was at one point in time, but because he was the best at mixing macro with like timing attacks, with doing the all-in, that then set up the timing attack that he does next game, and then the timing attack he does next game allows him to do an all-in the next game, and then the next one's you go and defend the all-in, and now he does the macro game and he beats you. He's beating you with the game. You're trying to beat him with like your own skills. You just want it to be a battle of who, like that's the debate to describe it, okay? DeMuslim doesn't want to win a game of StarCraft. He wants to prove that he's better than the other person in that one game of StarCraft. And so the way you do that is you go macro game and you both try to strategically beat each other and outmaneuver each other. Okay, that proves who's better, but it doesn't prove like who had the more valid strategy. The more valid strategy is the one that wins the game. Sorry, that's just the fact of how it is. And the big problem is, the reason I really don't like it when it's from DeMuslim, say this was someone like, okay, Nanoir is a good example, okay, because Nanoir also plays for an EG type organization, and he in theory has streaming hours he has to do every month. And sometimes, I know Nanoir sometimes feels like, oh, maybe my opponent watched my streams and they knew what I was going to do in the tournament, so I can't practice my stream games, what I'm going to do in the tournament. And he's paranoid about this, okay. But his reasoning is valid because he's one of the best players in the world. And he only does the streaming stuff because he's forced to within his contract, okay? So it makes sense in that context. DeMuslim is a streamer. He's not a professional gamer, okay? He's a professional streamer. He goes to some tournaments because within his team, they're like a fantasy reality TV show where they say that they're professional gamers and they put them in a tournament every now and then. And then they get to place like 40th. But I can't even believe you asked that question with a straight face, ChanManV. Should DeMuslim consider not streaming so that he can do better in tournaments? Well, what is that jump from 40th to 29th going to be worth? Like $200? Meanwhile, he can stream every day and make good money. So I don't even know what that debate's about. Like, yeah, do the streaming.
Well, it's a debate because deep down he wants to be the player.
Yeah, it's the time-old question of should somebody never stream in the hopes of furthering themselves as a player who can finish well in tournaments, or should they go the streaming route, in which case they make it a lot harder to beat.
But that only makes sense if you're already a really top player.
But we're talking about somebody who. But we're talking about somebody who has the best in one area of it. We're talking about somebody that has like a ton of followers already.
Could DeMuslim have turned his stream off, like a year ago and have been really good? I mean, like obviously now it might be a little bit late, but
no, the answer's no.
You don't think it really not streamed at all
the bigger question is, the bigger question is Ben predictable enough whether he streams or not to get cheesed? Do all his opponents really go look at his Twitch VODs and like scout him on every map and go, okay, I got him? Or is he just known? Like everyone knew how to get under Greg's skin. They didn't have to watch his shit. You just knew how to push those buttons.
Greg is an unrealistic and Greg is so predictable.
No, but that's actually a debate that I hear people say. Like I told you with the Nanoir example, now the Idra example, now the DeMuslim. They're worried that people have watched their stream, okay, and that they're going to do this cheese against them. That's such a cop-out argument, though, because think about it. If that really worked, then you could beat them yourself by going, oh, I just practice macro games all the time on stream. Then I do the cheese at the LAN. Oh, you guys are all expecting me to do that. No one does that. In real sports, you don't win by risky, stupid strategies. You can win in the short term by that. You win by being the better player. And part of being the better player is executing your strategy. Like in basketball, everyone knows everyone else's playbook. You have like 6 plays that you're going to do on offense, and we have 5, and you know exactly what they are, and you know exactly when I do this pass here, it sets off this guy to run over here. The point is, because we both know, it's then who executes better within the game. It's not like this idea, which, by the way, this used to exist in Counter-Strike, this stupid idea that people were like saving strategies for the big LAN. That is a total myth. That never happened. There was no secret strategy that no one's ever seen that's going to win the whole fucking game. And if no one sees it, oh God, you're going to dominate everyone. Let's say DeMuslim doesn't practice on stream, okay? And so he doesn't get cheesed in the round of 16 of some tournament. Okay, so he wins the round of 16 match, okay? Right? Well, he's just used some strategies there. How many more strategies does he have that are secret that they're all going to now work throughout the whole tournament?
We've
The
seen
implication
that, we've
is that
seen
he's
that
the better
phenomenon
player.
happen, though, Thorin. We have seen it happen. I
Like
remember.
what? Give me an example.
Remember the Slayers, that the Hellion drop. The Hellion drop into the main. I can't even remember exactly, but the entire Slayers team had this build against NZV or TBZ
God,
that one.
fucking stupid broken.
Yeah,
blue
it was
flame
broke, but
alien
still,
bullshit.
that surprised all the Zergs at that LG. And then Nanny Wants come up, gateway first type of things at either Dreamhack or something, and gotten very far because of that one build.
The only problem,
there has been
okay,
things like that.
we're getting really far. But the only problem with that is that, and I'm not trying to shut on anybody because DeMuslim is a really good player. But the only problem is DeMuslim would never, ever, ever do that. DeMuslim's not the kind of player that's going to come out with brand new weird fucking strategies and timings and kill you or whatever, because he plays pretty much a straight up macro game more or less all the time. Yeah, can we agree on that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's kind of a
true.
predictable
That's
player,
probably true.
whether he streams or
Yeah.
not. Like he just
Yeah.
kind of is. No offense to Ben, it's just his nature.
Also,
and-
StarCraft 2 is a much different game because what Thorin was talking about, that kind of example actually exactly fucking happened with Savior in Brood War. That motherfucker was making up like fucking 3 or 4 strategies like per like fucking series and shit that he had coming up. That guy would make different builds all the fucking time.
Yeah.
But when you talk about a person that's known for just playing relatively straight up macro and then like they don't stream and then they show up at tournaments and then they play relatively straight up macro, it's like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
like,
and the
what's-
streaming thing,
what's gonna-
and someone in chat was like, "Well, he streams because he works for EG, and EG's a marketing team, a marketing company." Just put a little fucking brain fucking knowledge out there. Every gaming team is a marketing team. All right, simple as that. End of story. They all wear fucking logos. They're all marketing for somebody, or they wouldn't have any money at all. So let's just start with that. Why does Korea not have so much money? Because they haven't been really good at marketing their teams, right? Now they're all losing their sponsors. So you can shit on EG all you want, but they're all marketing teams. EG happens to be good at it. Now, Ben and streaming. All the EG guys have streaming stuff in their contract. It's all slightly different. Again, I left a while ago, but I imagine it's still similar. If Ben didn't want to stream, he could take a pay, because it's all based on pay. You stream this much hours, this is the deal. You do this, this, and this, we pay you this. And on top of that, Ben makes his own money on top of streaming with the ad rev, right? So Ben could simply stop streaming tomorrow, but EG will pay him less money, and then he will make less money. But he certainly could do that, and that's up to him. So you can't get mad at EG because they said, hey, this contract gets you this much money, do you want it? And he said,
actually,
yes.
you know what's really, the thing that's really funny actually is that while Ben made that blog and complained about fucking that cheesing, if you really think about it, he has made more than like probably 90% of the players who are playing at the fucking WCS tournaments. If you take into account the money that he's made with EG and the money he's made streaming.
Sure. And like
just
someone
from
just said,
salary
yeah,
and
that
streaming,
Naniwa
he's
actually
probably
took a-
made.
like
He's
it's
probably
someone
made
like
more than tons of really good Koreans.
Yeah,
play
yeah,
StarCraft
easily. Make more than 95% of it.
That's
99%
why.
of
That's
every
the main reason
player.
I don't say his points aren't valid. Okay, some of them aren't, but some of them are valid. But it's just sour grapes. You're just complaining about something like that just for the sake of complaining. Almost like, yeah, this is StarCraft 2. People will cheese you. You might not get as far as you think you should. Someone who you think shouldn't beat you in the tournament. I mean, I notice it never goes the other way. Like, these players never consider their win over a way better player some kind of undeserved win, and it was bullshit and that wasn't justified. They always think they beat someone else straight up and it was totally fair and all the rest of it. Like,
Yeah.
complaining's never that fun to read.
Well, no, and again, it's like you made. And again, I like Ben a lot, but he kind of made his own bed. You can't on the one side take all the money and stream a lot, and then get mad because you streamed a lot and there was outcome to it. Like it. And again, Chad has said that Naniwa took a pay cut so he didn't have to stream. I remember one of Huck's negotiations. Without getting into too much detail, he doesn't like to stream that much, and so I think the deal was cut that you stream less, but you get paid less, right? Because again, your exposure is less. Our sponsor's exposure is less. So, it sucks for Ben that via all of this, in his mind, he's getting cheesed because everyone's watched him. But again, you kind of made your own bet on that, and maybe when his next contract comes up, he goes, hey, less money, stream on my hours when I want, and I'll take the risk. I don't know.
And that will
Ben.
never
telling you,
happen.
he could
That will
have
never
worse
Money
happen.
problems.
talks, right? Money,
He could
money,
have
money.
worse problems,
Exactly,
okay?
yeah.
When he,
Yeah.
And by the way, if cheesing didn't exist, this game would be even more Korean dominated. If everyone had to play the way DeMuslim wants to, he himself wouldn't be successful because all these godlike Korean macro players would crush him who have the same level of skill or better and better practice and all the rest of it,
Thorin,
So
the Koreans cheese.
That's why I'm saying it's like wishing.
the Koreans probably cheese more than the foreigners do, quite honestly. But that's because
No,
they
but Korea
understand.
has meta macro players though.
Yeah, they are. They are. But I'm just saying, like
They have
generally
more
speaking, they
better
probably
football
do
players.
cheese more because they
You know,
accept that. They accept that to be part of the game.
Yeah,
Right?
and
So-
Grey Mondo does bring up a good point. Like, this is a DeMuslim blog on his Facebook page to his fan base, so to speak. It's not like he wrote an
Yeah,
op-ed article for Team
yeah.
Liquid. So
Absolutely.
again, what do people do on their blog? They give their opinions, they give their thoughts. They, he brain dumped, and yeah, he is in the public spotlight. So then you get critiqued for your brain dump. But and also chat just mentioned that he got cheesed at IEM after the article
Yeah,
too,
he
right?
did.
So
He did.
so yeah, again, it's the nature
Okay.
of.
Yeah, he's
know, it's
just
like-
again,
Everyone should
it
cheese
was-
him, because if you cheese him in the first game and you win, then he's going to be on tilt. You can already tell from this vlog. So if anything, he's just done the opposite of what he wanted. He's just told everyone how to piss him off
Wait.
even more. Now, if they're
Are we
really
talking
watching his,
about-
That was
Is
the
this about
comment
DeMuslim
actually.
or Idra?
Jeez,
no.
man.
By the way, that thing that Stephen was talking about before about Idra, all you have to do is go to Google and type in Rekrul, which is REKRUL, and then
Yeah,
space
I put
Idra.
it- I put it on
and it'll
stream.
come to a.
Yeah.
It'll come to a fan club thing where it's not just Idra though, because he did a whole series of these blogs called "Foreigners Suck." And the best thing about him is you guys all worship Artosis and think he's an awesome guy now, but Artosis had an Idra type attitude back in Brood War, and so there's a whole bunch that are just wrecking Artosis as well. So you've got to read this stuff. It's so good. The one about Idra is the best though, because he like breaks it down point by point, and it'll be like Idra make a comment like, he should have done this, and then I would have beaten him, and he'll be
God.
like, "No, you fucking idiot! He's not going to do what you want." Like the tone is
I
so
think-
raw that it's actually really
Yeah.
hilarious.
This is so unrelated, but I always thought it was really funny when you talk about these other games that are getting big now, League of Legends and Dota, and the StarCraft kids always complain how casual they are. Man, nobody here fucking remembers the Brood War community when StarCraft 2 started coming out. Literally every bad thing that you could say about the StarCraft 2 to League of Legends community was like 4 million times amplified between the Brood War and fucking StarCraft 2 community.
Yeah, that's a
All
good
of the
point.
pros that came over that we worship as heroes, people like Nesty and MVP, were huge fucking dropout flunkies in Brood War. Everybody in Brood War made fun of them for that shit. They thought it was hilarious that our gods of StarCraft 2 were Brood War failures and shit. I always thought that was really funny.